Okay, yeah, let's kick it off. So thanks everyone for gathering. I'm really excited to see. I guess everyone is tired already from all the panels, networking, but yeah, hopefully you're bear with us for this one. We have really interesting topic lined up. And yeah, we are going to explore more cryptographic versus cryptoeconomic security. Basically, are these competing forces or a perfect pair for a future of crypto? We have a really nice setup here of experts and really technical people who work with that every day. So yeah, hopefully you can bring a lot out of this. And yeah, I'm Zygis. I'm head of product at Viet, and happy to moderate this today. Maybe initially we can go for a round of introductions and yeah, shortly about yourself and what you're doing at your organizations. So Algys, maybe let's start with you.
Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Algys. I'm building Symbiotic. I'm kind of CTO and co-founder. Yeah, so basically, Symbiotic shares security protocol. It's very generalized. Everybody can basically connect. Everybody can build on top of Symbiotic. It's permissionless. You can do whatever you want. And so basically, the goal is for shared security and like the protocols like Symbiotic. And for us, especially, is to make the decentralization process as simple as running the POA, like or multisig or shit like this.
I hope it works. Amazing. Hey, everyone. My name is Viet, head of DevRel at Celestia Labs. Yeah, Celestia is a very boring data availability and consensus layer. It has no execution, so I'm sorry. Every you know, weird alien technology you figured out is not possible directly on Celestia, but with Celestia underneath, you can get it done. And yeah, we strongly believe in cryptographic security with light nodes.
Thank you very much. I'm Patrick from Randamu. Randamu, we are stewards of the DRAN project, the core maintainers, and we steward the League of Entropy, which is providing randomness, verifiable randomness as a public good. As well as that, we're working on a new protocol for threshold encryption, conditional encryption, and a manner of other interesting cross-chain things.
Hey everyone, my name is Ismael. I'm the founder of Lagrange. Lagrange is a ZK company. We focus on the generation of zero knowledge proofs for a large variety of roll-up ecosystems, folks like ZK Sync and Polygon. And we also focus on the generation of proofs on several own products that we have related to verifiable data and verifiable machine learning.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for this. So yeah, let's get straight into the topic. So yeah, cryptographic versus cryptoeconomic security, I guess, very old topics. Proof of work was based basically on cryptography, right? Proof of stake on cryptoeconomy. But now with recent developments in like ZK coprocessors and FHE, MPC, and AVSs with cryptoeconomy, right? The landscape has been really shifting. So maybe to begin with, we could like go over a bit like what recent changes are you seeing in the fields that you are developing, how it is changing, like what new paradigms are you seeing and how it is shifting the entire crypto landscape. And yeah, maybe Ismael, we can start with you this time from the other round.
Yeah, so to start with, there's a lot of approaches to how you want to assert an off-chain computation on-chain. You can have a proof of the correctness of the computation. You can have someone attest or a group of people attest to the computation with a relevant stake. You can use a TEE, you can use an optimistic guarantee with slashing. But really, there's a variety of security properties that each of those have. The most secure way to do it is obviously to prove it, right? But that's simply the question of asserting an off-chain computation on-chain. The nature of a blockchain requires a consensus or a group of actors who are re-executing code or proving code in the case of the Beam chain and then re-executing a verification of that code. So you do require economic security for consensus, right? On most systems. So really, like at the limit, cryptographic and cryptoeconomic security are not competitive for how blockchains are designed. They're competitive for how middleware tends to be designed.
I think in the early days of blockchain, people were very religious maybe on the different tenets of verifying things and cryptography and such cryptographic security. And I think although the technology there is improving now in the real world, when people want to use some of these projects, they're willing to make more compromises for better performance or for cheaper interaction with smart contracts and such. So even the zero knowledge proofs are getting cheaper and better. We're still seeing plenty of chains that are not necessarily using them, where they can just go for more quote unquote human security. I think in terms of cryptoeconomic security, a lot of it in the early days was slightly theoretical, and now as we're getting more and more systems deployed, we're seeing that actually how certain incentives play out in real life and how certain possible disaster scenarios don't always play out or do sometimes play out, and the pros and cons maybe of cryptoeconomic security.
Yeah, definitely say that maybe before people were very religious about what is security, which means that only cryptography, math will make it work. But yeah, currently now everyone is trying to go to market faster, and the cryptoeconomic security is literally becoming the king of the game. Good example, I think no one needs to deny this argument, is Hyperliquid, literally a GTMB for viral data set that the community is loving way much more than any FHE, BLS, whatever you want to name it, going forward. So what we're seeing as boring DA layer is not about just pushing the cypherpunk vision forward, rather making it sane for the app developer to say, yo, I see this cryptographic thing making sense much more than JTM being. So yeah.
Yeah, so basically, I think there is no two things like cryptographic security and cryptoeconomic security. There is only security. And you have cryptographic and you have like economic, and you can mix it together. For example, okay, if you need some set of operators and they're running some state, you need something as a collateral. So basically, it's economic. You should be aligned in the profit. You should be aligned economically with something you're running with. And the cryptographic for us, and like in general for the industry, I think it's kind of thing that can optimize a lot of stuff for you, and it can make the life simpler. So you don't need to basically trust a lot. You're minimizing the trust assumptions, but you still need parties to execute your code or execute your state or like run your state.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks for this. Maybe we'll go into more like personal protocol specific questions. So yeah, maybe I'd like to start with Celestia, for example, right now. We recently saw, let's say, Ethereum announcing Beam chain, right? Like we're more relying on the Zygis proofs, right? Like basically infinite blocks and stuff like that. And right now, Celestia is proof of stake network, right? I think you can stake Celestia, you're earning 10% yield, right? Like, and you're securing the network by this. But I guess you also want to scale to 1 gigabyte blocks at least, like, and even higher. How do you see that being scaled? Like, is it more on the cryptoeconomic security, still maintaining the stake, or just trying to increase with cryptographic security, like the block sizes? Potentially, I know, using AVSs for a cheaper cryptoeconomic security and stuff like that. So just curious how you see that from the kind of chain or like dApp perspective, right?
Yeah, I would say that myself, if you ask me what is cryptoeconomic security for Celestia, for me personally, I would say it's a good chart in L2Beat. You want to look and say you've done a great job, but job is not finished. For 1 gigabyte blocks that we want to go, the only way we see that is sane is cryptographic, using light nodes that are sampling, and collectively they can basically prove that no data has been left unchecked. And this is the only sane and I think scalable way to move forward as an industry, because the cryptoeconomic part, if we double down on it on Celestia, it will just make it so much worse that you will always look at the chart and say, okay, we are down, let's say 100 basis points, GG, and you cannot scale. If you want to have a very good base layer, people can bet on and build more let's say fine-tuned, tailored products, they at least need to know that the base layer is basically a tank. So yeah, that's what we believe.
Do you think 1 gigabyte blocks is the limit?
Ideally, I would like to see 1 petabyte blocks, so I can go back to my G Eric Wall and say now Dick Butts rollups is not a meme anymore. But yeah.
Okay, cool. maybe Ismael on Lagrange model, right? Like you're a Ziki coprocessor, right? You're allowing processing different type of code with Ziki proofs, but you still opted for restake security, right? Like you still go for cryptoeconomic security. So why is that the case? What benefit do you see in the specific thing?
Yeah, so I think that's a mischaracterization to a little bit of an extent, because we do ZK. So we're a business that generates zero-knowledge proofs. The question is, if I request a proof from a given actor at a given point in time, how do I assure that that actor generates the proof properly? How do I ensure there's liveness, there's censorship resistance, and all of the things that go into developing a protocol that predicates a core function on top of a zero-knowledge proof, right? If, for example, I have a DeFi app, and that DeFi app is going to issue a loan based on some collateral being priced with a ZK coprocessor. And I want to arbitrage that app, so I just don't give it a proof. And it can't reprice its collateral, and then I can just rug the lending app. Right? So liveness and censorship resistance is a very important property of anything that runs on a blockchain. And in the purest form, a zero-knowledge proof can't confer properties of liveness or censorship resistance. All it can do is confer safety of a computation, or correctness of a computation. And so that's why, as a team, we've launched a network, the Lagrange Prover Network, that is focused on generating zero-knowledge proofs with high guarantees of liveness and censorship resistance for our coprocessor, for our ZK machine learning applications, and for a lot of our friends, roll-up teams like Polygon, ZK Sync, etc., as well as roll-up as a service providers, Caldera, Altlayer, etc. Basically, you can think of anywhere that a zero-knowledge proof is being used needs guarantees of liveness and censorship resistance over the generation of that proof in order for that domain to be secure.
Okay, I saw some other also Ziki coprocessor protocols presenting a case where the capital to be staked, the capital that's required for staking is becoming lower basically, and you can achieve the same results with a lower capital because just because you don't need to distribute rewards so much, you're not spending so much on the staking program. So are you also a believer on this in this field that it makes the economy cheaper overall if we get fully Ziki provable blocks and chains?
Yeah, so I think it's important to kind of understand where capital cost comes from. Right. So the reason Celestia has 10-15% emission is because Celestia requires people to stake TIA token, right? Because staking requirements is one of the best supply sinks in all of blockchain, right? If you don't have enough fees to cover user activity or to cover staking, you just say, hey, I'm just going to make more of asset X if you don't sell asset X, and therein you hold asset X and don't sell it, and we all don't sell it, we all get paid more. That's how most Tendermint chains and POS protocols in the world exist. But they're not optimizing for lowering capital cost. They're optimizing for people buying asset X and not selling asset X because there's something they can do to get more of it. What restaking is taking an existing pool of capital, like Ethereum, and using that for another productive purpose. And so since the principal yield is covered by the Ethereum emission, you don't have to pay the base capital cost of the asset. You just have to pay a high enough yield to offset marginal risk that you introduce. So if I impose the ability to slash your asset, I have to pay you based on the likelihood of me slashing it, right? If I'm not slashing it, I have to pay you for the cost and the risk of you holding the asset. If Ethereum's already paying for that for you holding ETH, then I only need to cover the risk. And that's where restaking gets to a very low capital cost. But it's a very different problem than something like what Celestia is doing, which is very much how do I get people to buy my asset, right?
Yeah, exactly. Maybe for Algys, from your perspective, would be interesting. How do you see this space, right? Of course, you're involved in restaking, but you're also allowing very interesting, cryptographic solutions with AVSs, basically, right? So where do you see the space going?
Yes, so basically we operate on very low level, I think. So basically we are providing the staking infrastructure and staking solution for any kind of networks that involves that brings us to multiple infinite amount of models, networking models, running consensus, agent-based, task-based, and whatever. So basically we are leveraging cryptographic a lot. So our goal is basically to minimize the cost always, not from only the perspective of restaking, because it's minimizing the cost itself, but also from the perspective of running the infrastructure. So basically, once you need to slash something, once you need to reach some consensus, like aggregate some signatures, we're trying to minimize this effort, even making it cheaper than having your runtime, your own runtime that you have control over that. So that's why we have like kind of a lot of things, including ZK, including like some sort of Merkleizations, like all of these structures that aims basically that basically we are using to make it simple, cheap and simple for everyone. And the question here is because the challenge here is because we have a lot of different networks. That's why we are trying to make it common, make it kind of standard for everybody.
You're touching on the point that it's making it cheaper. I'm curious to hear how, for example, how, let's say, Celestia sees that the capital is becoming cheaper if you use like just major assets like Ethereum, Bitcoin, which you can get like from restake capital. So, and I think Ismael also touched it a bit that you need to spin up your own token, right? But like, do you really need to pay so much for security when you can get basically cheaper in other places? How do you see this like staking field progressing?
Honestly speaking, the original idea of Lazy Ledger at Celestia was trying to figure out how to build on top of Ethereum. And we have stumbled on a big blocker that is not possible. So everyone who's trying to build on top, good luck. And the reason why you launch basically a token is because, hey, at least you end up with the social slashing part where you say someone has misbehaved, withheld, you proved with the light node, you go to the part which is the last one, dirty social slashing, and with blaming in CT. And I think this is where building products on top, I fully agree that restaking has a lot of potential to unite capital that has already been formed, but where people are missing the point, I think in cryptoeconomic and cryptographic designs, is where's the balance. Because sometimes you see that people are chasing the yield and forgetting about the product. And this happened, for example, we can now debate that the classic debate is actually USDC is the bridge, and all Ethereum / Bitcoin doesn't matter. And if it was enshrined in all rollup designs that USDC can be the canonical token, I can guarantee that right now, considering how much we're going into fintech products, people would have been using non-sovereign assets like Bitcoin, because it is not known for the normal retail user. So now if we say that we are betting our cryptoeconomic security on a fiat, then what are we doing? So you see that there is always this balance.
Yeah, why would we need thousands of tokens, right?
Exactly.
But I mean, I think to be fair, like the reason that we can hire teams and build companies to actually build blockchain infrastructure is because we can launch our own token on top of it, right? Otherwise, there'd be no financing for this stuff. Nobody would be building it, right? So the ability to launch a token, despite the fact that it might not be necessary for protocol function, is really the only way to finance this type of R&D.
Yeah, I guess restaking just monopolizes the tokens in terms like of which are being used for economic security. Right?
But dual quorum is very good there, right? Because you can effectively, and Eigenlayer does this very well, where you can use your own asset plus ETH, and there's mechanism of why that's beneficial, but it gives you a very high degree of economic security. It's at a very low cost, and also allows you to have value capture back to your own token, which for many protocols is really the only way that they can properly remunerate employees, investors, and early backers.
Yeah, makes sense. Patrick, you provide verifiable randomness, right? You're using threshold cryptography for that. Do you see it as a viable path to scaling solutions without using any cryptoeconomic related solutions, or like because your product is purely cryptography based, right? Like,
yeah, Threshold sits in a strange space where it's cryptographic technology, but it's not purely about verification and correctness in the same way zero knowledge is. It's like a cryptographic construction of meat space reality. Like ultimately it's a form of attestation, really. So people in our network are working together to come to consensus of sorts around, in the case of randomness, a signature, in the case of something encryption or attestation things, some real world data. So it's almost their opinion on real world data, but codified as cryptographic signatures, which straddles a strange line where it's not really cryptographic in a way, but there could be cryptoeconomic incentives for getting it right or wrong potentially in the future. One drawback, I guess, of Threshold is that after the fact, it's hard to know if somebody has been compromised or if someone has been lying. You're kind of relying on a committee of people attesting to some fact. Whereas obviously if someone mines an incorrect block, you can look at the block and be like, hey, this is wrong, and punish them, which maybe you can't do in the same way with threshold signatures. But potentially there'll be new schemes in the future for things like trader tracing that could create new cryptoeconomic incentives for people in threshold systems to act honestly, that make them a little bit more robust, both cryptographically and cryptoeconomically. So I'm looking forward to researching and rolling those out.
Okay, thanks. I think, Ismael, you touched a bit on that tokens are necessary for our space because this is how we build companies, this is how we are spinning up these new different solutions, and I think without tokens we wouldn't have the current developments in the cryptoeconomic and cryptographic space, right? But if we are shifting more towards this cryptoeconomic primitive, which is based on restaking and basically just using the biggest assets for security, it means you need less of these new tokens, right? And that you're putting more and more attention onto the biggest assets, and it starts controlling the entire space. So maybe Algys, from your side, how do you see overall this space of launching new tokens evolving with the restaking now playing a big role in our world, and maybe not now, but maybe in the coming year or so?
Yeah, I think the restaking itself is more beyond that than just using the big assets like ETH or BTC. Yes, you can leverage it, but still, the view that we have for the restaking, you have your own token because it's a great alignment mechanism. For a lot of networks, alignment is a key thing that they want to achieve. So, for example, if you're building Oracle, you want to be your Oracle solution to be used in protocols, networks, etc. So basically, you can build the alignment mechanism with double staking, restaking. So basically, you can bring more utility for your own token in order to basically connect to some sort of networks or customers, and also allow them also to co-restake or co-stake to your kind of solution. It's enshrining the integration. It's not limiting the use case for the token itself, for the governance token or for own token. It's increasing the utility.
Okay. What about you, Viet? Do you see so let's say when we look 2 to 3 years into the future, do you see more development on Celestia happening in the cryptographic side or in the cryptoeconomic side? Where do you put more focus on?
I definitely think that we'll end up in the cryptographic side for the basic primitives. Reason is that if you look right now at pom.fun, the boys are basically getting hated by Solana Homebase at the amount of SOL they're dumping in Kraken. So it means that technically you don't need your own token to be a successful product. And what I believe is what people miss a lot is cryptoeconomic security is very necessary if you know that you're building a very grassroots project. You cannot get away with this. You need to get somehow of even customer retention aspect of it. I truly understand this. But if we look at majority of the products that we are rallying for, people will use cryptographics because you will not be bound to talk to 10 different people to talk about economics, and most of devs that I know are pretty much introverts, so they will want to ship in peace and silence, and cryptographic is the only way how you can ship in peace and silence, unbothered and moisturized. And I think launching products will make a lot of sense from a strategic wise for a lot of infrastructure grassroots projects, in the sense that will you, as an app developer, believe in the moneyness aspect of my token? I think this has become the next narrative in 2-3 years that people will talk about. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just to add a point on that, there are certain protocols, to your point, that have fee capture that don't need a token. But the majority of things in crypto tend not to generate enough fees to justify their existence as businesses. And so they need to create a token that is either a store of value, moneyness, or somebody's going to hold it and stake it because they expect to receive a return on it because they're minting more of them, which is Ponzi-nomics generally, but obfuscated in a bunch of like nice technical complexity. And that's like how most Tendermint chains have worked. And so I think the question of now building more capital efficient networks, and that's what this kind of, I'd argue this whole cycle's about, right? You can say, okay, all the way from bearer chain with proof of liquidity, which is in theory somewhat more capital efficient because you can use the consensus collateral within DeFi, right? All the way to kind of restaking, which is how do I take consensus collateral and use that for arbitrary middleware on a chain, all the way to cryptographic security, which is how do I take a bunch of useless middleware and replace that with proofs that are generated through a computational cost instead of a capital cost. All of this is about reducing, the overheads on capital within crypto, which generally you can argue making things cheaper every cycle is a great way to drive user experience adoption because it's much easier to build more complicated products. And so I think that's kind of this just broad narrative that all of this stuff ties into.
Yeah, but why would we need then overall cryptoeconomic capital? Because it seems that cryptoeconomic is becoming just an insurance that is built on top of protocol, and it seems that we can build solutions just with cryptographic primitives, right?
No, I mean, because we talked about this at the beginning a bit, right? A proof doesn't confer liveness or censorship resistance. It confers safety of a computation. And so if I need a proof for some component of a DeFi application on a blockchain, I'm going to need a network that has a stake associated with it that will generate that proof. Where there's a penalty if you delay and fail to generate that on time. It's the same thing with verification, right? If you need a proof to be verified somewhere that's publicly visible to all of us, that needs to happen on something where the person doing the verification has an incentive for the chain to progress, right? This all requires cryptographic security. Even like the beam chain vision requires cryptoeconomic security, right? You still need validators who are signing the accuracy of a verification of a proof. All you're doing is changing the replicated execution to replicated verification. So once again, more capital efficient, more computational efficient in this case, but still has capital requirements.
I think you actually touched on something interesting that devs, like you say, like to just kind of like throw technology at things. And I think there's a lot of obvious and well-defined standards around cryptography such that you can kind of wrap something in a proof or kind of wrap something in a certain protocol or scheme. But every system has very different cryptoeconomics, and there's no like single cryptoeconomic wrapper I can just throw over my application to suddenly make it secure. And I wonder if as time goes on, we'll get more and more cryptoeconomic protocols or frameworks that make it easier to achieve cryptoeconomic security in a sort of abstract sense that we don't have today.
Okay, interesting. Great. So yeah, last question for the panelists. It's basically how you see the space evolving in the coming 5 years. Basically, what will we pay attention next cycle, right? Like it was proof of stake the last cycle. Now we kind of are in the mix, right? So are we going to have like purely cryptographically driven cycle next time, or how do you see the space evolving overall, like the upcoming, whatever is in your mind, like up to 5 years?
Yeah, I think itself the security and cryptoeconomic security and like cryptographic security. Now it's quite enshrined. It's separated. So what that gives you, it gives you the ability to improve to these components in parallel. So you're increasing the capital efficiency from just pure staking side, and at the same level, even in Symbiotic, in very general solution, we are trying to optimizing a lot of the usage of this stake. So basically, we are touching consensus protocols and like underlying protocols, very low-level protocols, in order to optimize the usage. So basically, you can scale now linearly in terms of the capital that you can onboard, because there are some boundaries because of the cryptography. You cannot onboard billions of operators, billion nodes, because you have boundaries like time boundaries. They cannot agree on something or stuff like that. So basically, now you can separate these two things and work in parallel. So it's going to be much more mature systems with more operators, more validators, more actors, and still operating on the good level of the time, speed, and etc.
Okay, just 10x efficiency improvement, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, why 10 only? Maybe 100? Yeah, or like 1,000. I don't know.
In 2-3 years, correct?
Yeah, let's see.
Okay.
Next cycle.
Yeah. So I would definitely say that according to our latest Mamathon, those who are Web2 crack devs, they don't want to do fintech. They just look at what we do here and they say, guys, well done, thank you so much. We've seen Revolut is winning. You guys are trying to create a circus here with tokens. We don't want to do that. We're out. And it was a very refreshing discussion with them. And from our Mamathon, we noticed that simple things like building meme generators, Twitter clones, attestations like certificate transparency things were dwarfing everything that we thought with AI agents. And I think the next cycle will be defined by apps that are very lifestyle-ish, like Substack. Substacks right now to build on any L2 is, I would say, seppuku on a public view. And I think the app, the next app will define like the lifestyle thing without this crazy economics that Pump.Fun has. And we need to meet them both on cryptographic and cryptoeconomic side. That's what I think.
I think with the proliferation of L1s and L2s in the last few years, I think we're going to have a continued trend toward flexibility, like a variety of different cryptographic and cryptoeconomic incentives for every possible use case. But ultimately, as we onboard real users, they probably won't really care. Like you said, it's going to be lifestyle apps, and they're not going to read the white paper. So I think ultimately, there's going to be some proxy for reputation that's going to be more important. So it's like, I suppose, cryptoeconomic or maybe even extra cryptoeconomic incentives around companies or institutions or groups of institutions behaving honestly and doing things in perhaps a way that might scare some of the early crypto pioneers.
Yeah, so I think these are all very good points. I think capital efficiency is something we're going to keep seeing more of in crypto, especially as the overhead on proving drops, and you can start building things that are now much more feasible. But I think a very important point is about the directional correctness of technology. There's very few things in any industry that are like obviously directionally correct. Like across all of tech, you can say like, okay, maybe AI, quantum computers, space travel, and ZK are things that, like, as we watch the world go forward, we know 5 years, 10 years from now, we'll have more of, right? We'll need more verifiable compute for blockchain applications, unquestionably. We'll need AI across every area of the stack. We'll need quantum computers to train AI models and for a bunch of other things as well. And we'll need space travel at some point. I don't know why. Maybe to mine an asteroid. But what you can see that these technologies are correct because they're the most efficient way to solve a problem, even if the cost presently is too expensive. And so that's what I think is a very safe bet to look at. To go, okay, ZK, there's going to be more of that. We can argue the time frame of like how long it'll take to have a performant proof of like a 70 billion parameter LLM, but eventually we'll see it possible, where we see about an order of magnitude decrease in proving cost annually. So we can say, okay, maybe 3-4 years out, maybe asymptotically it drops below an order of magnitude and decrease in price, or it takes 5-6 years. But we will get there. And then everything will be proven, all computation, and you'll still need cryptoeconomic security for verification and for consensus and networking and things like that.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ismael. Seems we are all going to make it. And with this, let's finish. A big round of applause for the panelists. Thank you.